Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais. Andrew and Nick are on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. Welcome back to Matter of Facts podcast. That is a cricket chirping, not a smoke detector. Just had to put that out there before the internet said anything, because the internet's been a very unhinged place lately, and I don't think it's going to be any less unhinged. But welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast, the most professional amateur operation you've ever seen, or the most amateurish professional operation you've ever seen. One or the other, I'm not really sure which, and it changes every 5 minutes anyway. So welcome back to the shit show. Y'all opted to come to this corner of the internet. It's your fault, not mine. Just understand that you've been forewarned. So the topic for tonight is the state of this union. The other psychopaths with me are my co-host Nick and Trek, formerly of MDFI, still with MDFI. You're basically still with MDFI, even though if you're not like officially at the helm.
Still with MDFI as an adjunct instructor, but no longer the owner.
Still with him. Okay. So I keep wanting to say like you're not the face of MDFI anymore, but I feel like you still.
Oh no, definitely not. No, I have a great face for radio, so I'll try to stay off that man.
I mean, that's fair. We're gonna have to get you and your cadre that's been
promoted.
I'm struggling with words tonight, which is a bad sign. I was gonna say promoted, but usually taking ownership in anything is not actually a promotion in most cases. It's usually a demotion. You get title, but then you get more work, and the more work is always a lot more work.
Oh yeah,
and especially, I mean, if they have to fill Trek shoes, then it's going to be a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
But I digress. We're going to have to get them on and talk about all that goings on. But for tonight, we have to have a very uncomfortable, serious conversation about what the hell has happened in the last, I don't know, week and a half here in the United States of America, because I didn't think this timeline was the one I was going to land on, but here we are. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I'm using that word intentionally because I don't know another word for a politically motivated offing of somebody in front of witnesses. It seems like the appropriate word.
I would say very definition.
Yeah, it's awful hard to argue against because I mean, what else do you call it?
Right.
I can't think of anything.
No, it was, whether murder or assassination. I mean, assassination it certainly fits the bill, but a horrific crime was committed for sure.
Yeah, and the part of this that makes this uncomfortable for me to talk about is like, towards the end of last year, we saw two nut jobs take a shot at our current sitting president while he was on the campaign trail, and I thought that was a little out of pocket. That worried me because in my admittedly short lifetime, I haven't seen that degree of like an outward attempt on that high profile of a politician's life. And it concerned
Well, there was
me.
the Republican baseball game shooting.
True.
That's pretty high profile. I mean, yeah, it wasn't a presidential candidate and it wasn't a former president, but it was still a number of elected officials at once being targeted.
No, that's fair.
And then there's the DNC congressman from Michigan. I want to say congressmen or senators from Michigan that were attacked very recently.
Yeah, Raggle, help us out here. Was that Michigan? Because I'm drawing a blank on what state it was.
I believe it was. But, I think that, Kyle is right. Violence is in general becoming more mainstream. And I think a lot to do with that is the depersonalization that we're seeing of people on both sides. I mean, there has been a lot of very extreme rhetoric from both the DNC and the RNC. Let's be very clear about that. I mean, Trump, whatever you want to say about the guy, he has called people enemies. I don't really think we should be calling our countrymen enemies unless they're directly acting against it. Now, this person that assassinated Charlie Kirk, yeah, he's an enemy of the public, of the general public, because political assassinations never do any good.
No, they don't. And I think part of the reason why this it concerns me because we've seen so much of it in such a short time frame that the question I started asking myself is this going to become Raggle Fraggle, correct us? It was Minnesota, not Michigan. But the part that worries me is this going to become a thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, are we moving into an era where the end result of all the verbiage about deplorables and about Nazis and about unpersoning whole groups of people based on political, social ideas, like is the end result of that the fact that we can no longer have rational, thoughtful debate? We can't have a difference of opinion any longer. We can't discuss that difference of opinion any longer. We don't want to find common ground with the other side. We don't want to coexist with them any longer. Are we reaching a point in this country where the end result of this path, that the last stone in this path is just the unabated attempt to wipe out the other side? Because there is no, I don't know. That's where my mind goes though at a moment like this. It concerns me because it alludes to the fact that we're reaching a tipping point where there's been so much tit for tat, one direction or the other, and this feels like a substantial escalation for some reason.
Well, I think this is a byproduct of a slope in which the snowball started small and it's been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We are, it seems to be correcting itself mildly with the new administration, which there's a lot of things about the new administration that I find completely unacceptable, but it is certainly, when you talk about the lesser of two evils, I would agree that it is certainly better than what the alternative would have been. And that's sad. Frankly, that's pretty sad, but that is the true case. We have men can be women versus just saying, whoever you are, you're a fellow human being. As long as you're not hurting another person, you can call yourself a ficus. And if you want to marry a ficus, marry a ficus. And if you want to be a gay baker with 2 micro Uzis marrying a ficus, do whatever you want to do. Don't hurt anybody. But the problem is we say, well, men can't be women. And then there are people that will die on the hill to say that a man can become a woman and a woman become a man. And we know that is not the truth. We have someone that may dress up like the opposite sex. They may get surgery to change themselves physically to look like the opposite sex. But the truth is that you can't. And so that's just one example of the silliness and asinine things that have been happening in a cascading effect. And so because the environment is rife with the death of shame, truth, and honor, which is frankly, and it's been, I think, dead in our country for quite some time, where you can be a politician, you are telling a lie. The evidence is out there that you are telling a lie, but you make the counter accusations because you have no shame, you have no honor, and because of the noise from social media and from your political party and their political party, it's the death of truth. No one will acknowledge or allow the truth to be out there because the shame and honor is dead as well. And so it's interesting that you mentioned, are we at a point in which everybody's the enemy that's on the other side? And that's something that, for those that have never read the book on combat, Colonel David Grossman, he also authored On Killing. There are 2 books that everybody that is interested in self-defense, that carries a weapon, that's thinking about carrying a weapon, that, the cliche sheepdog, you're a good person, but you might have to turn violent, and you need to understand, from the other side, what the criminal mindset is. One of the most interesting things that Colonel Grossman wrote on combat was the psychological conditioning that we have done to our troops historically. And he goes back and starts with the Civil War. Well, the Civil War, it wasn't so civil, but it was called that because it was the classic, fathers fighting sons and brothers fighting brothers, and it was the North and the South, and we can argue about the states' rights versus slavery and all that nonsense, but the reality was these were Northerners fighting Southerners and vice versa. They were countrymen that one day all of a sudden became on the other side. And he talks about in the book that it was very common. The statistic was 3%, roughly, 10%. I think it was 10%. 10%, I'm thinking the 3%ers from the Revolutionary War. Roughly 10% of troops in combat in the Civil War actually conducted fighting against the other side. Now, 100% of them were on the battlefield, but only 10% engaged in aiming, firing, loading, aiming, firing, and trying to kill the other guy that's on the other side of the field. They found soldiers on both sides that had loaded their rifles, muskets, rifles, depending on who had what, 10 times, 15 times. They just kept putting in the powder patch ball, whatever, buck.
Right.
They would not fire at the enemy, but they had to show their commanding officers they looked like they were fighting. And so they would sit there and take cover, and they'd always act like that they were loading. And the reason being is these are my countrymen. And so it was a very small percentage of troops. I'll save you my entire diatribe about the book, but by Vietnam, so we go from the Civil War to Vietnam, 90% of combat troops actively engaged the enemy and tried to kill the enemy. 10% did not. And if you look at, and I won't, of course, share them here, but you look at how we demonized, and the same can be said for our enemies in World War II. And they're, demonization for some of the brutality and things that were done absent of the quote unquote laws of war. Yeah, especially the guys that were there. I mean, you have every right to demonize the brutality that you saw. But if we look at the campaign of what we called the Viet Cong, the derogatory comments, and that wasn't just for the guys in the field then that were dealing with the brutality. It was the marketing from the drill sergeants to the U.S. government. They were subhuman. And by doing that, creating a belief in the soldier that the enemy is not a human being. It does not have a family. It does not, love other people. It's easier to kill them. And what we have seen is it used to be, and what there's many sad things about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But this was a guy that would sit down and he would bring facts. He tried, and I don't know the man. I believe he tried to stay honorable. He did not insult the people that he was trying to debate. I mean, I think I saw him a couple times defend himself verbally from some real awful things that were said, but he wasn't out there throwing fists. He was saying, if you're willing to talk to me, well, that used to be, and I think we'd all be in agreement, you could get into a fight. When I was a child, no one's getting stabbed or shot.
Yep.
You get in a fist fight, you get a bloody nose. And then generally, if it was especially two dudes, probably a couple days later, they probably had actually created a bond of some sort for slugging it out and dealing with it. But there was never a thought of taking somebody's life over a simple disagreement. We talk about the Wild West, and it wasn't necessarily so wild when it was operating under natural law, because people kind of knew that if you effed around, you were going to find out. So you could get into a fist fight with a guy wearing a gun, and as long as you didn't touch that gun or you dropped that gun belt, the other person wasn't going to go for their gun. They would duke it out. But now, I think we'd all be in agreement. The country's in quite a bit more of a powder keg state, and everybody knows that if somebody road rages right now, and you have every right to flip them the bird or to yell at them that they almost took your life or the life of your family, you know full well that there's a very good chance it's going to go lethal or extremely violent. And that is because of what we have done. And right before we went on, we were talking about social media. Twitter, X, great place for actually getting independent media. Yeah, horrible place if you want to feel good about the world, because it's a vile place. Yeah, we've gotten away from the place where people will even talk on the internet like they're talking across the table to another human being. And so what we have is a hyper partisan environment where if you're not on my side of the debate, then you are evil and you are subhuman, and violence against you is okay, but violence is not against my side. At the same time, we are in a society in which people are told, no, you can't duke it out. You can't punch it out and then plug it out. So we've become so violent in the void of social media and on the internet but we are so restrained in actual society that when people snap, it's pent up rage that they can't just go duke it out or, put the boxing gloves on. They go full potato, and combined with the fact that they're looking at that opponent, that they're not a human being. They don't have loved ones. They don't bleed. That's where we're at. And we're seeing, we're at the state, one of the heightened stages of societal collapse with the amount of politically motivated murders, assassinations, whatever you want to call them. And it's all because we're looking at the other side as, they're the ones that want to take your guns and kill your kids and put you in jail. And they're saying the exact same thing. The sad part is I don't know historically of a country that changed direction before going over the waterfall. Generally what happens is the boat goes over the waterfall, the survivors pick up the pieces and go, let's never go over a waterfall ever again.
I do think there are some positive signs, though. Looking at the response to it online, yes, there are the unhinged individuals that are celebrating it, and many of them have lost their jobs over it. Okay, great. That's good. If you're going to be advocating for political violence online or in front of your corporate logo, don't be surprised if you lose your job. They've all got shareholders to report to. But what I am seeing more of than anything else is people saying that I disagreed with him, but this is unacceptable. Or I didn't even know who he was, but this is unacceptable. Or I support him and this is unacceptable. But the common throughput of all of it was political assassination is unacceptable. Political violence is unacceptable. And that has been the vast majority of what I've seen limited online, even on Reddit. I mean, Reddit is a leftist cesspit, even worse than X ever was. And the vast majority of people on there are saying, yeah, I hated that guy. I thought he was a terrible person, but we should not be engaging in political violence because it leads to terrible ends, and it does not put our argument in a good light. And I think that's a really positive thing to be seeing. I try not to be a pathological optimist or a pathological pessimist, but I don't see as much arguing that it was a good idea, or even that it was.
Well, I don't think
okay.
we will. I think that's the issue, though. The classic, the 3%, only 3% of Americans fought, to stand up this new nation, right? And so the majority of all of our countrymen are centrist and then hover to the right or left of that center. I would say that the extremes have gotten bigger on both sides over, pick a timeline. We are certainly at the most heightened state of extremism on both ends of the spectrum. And so it doesn't take, the majority, of course, is they understand it's not good. It's not going to end well. But I would say there's a couple things to that. We know that the extremism on both ends of the spectrum is certainly bigger. There are people
it's at least more vocal.
They just can't. Well, and that's the problem is the internet allows everybody to have a voice, and a lot of people should just not. But that is just the reality.
The blessing and the curse of communication.
Yeah. So the challenge there is, okay, so now you have those that ran their mouth and found out that maybe posting, yay, Charlie Kirk was shot wearing your major oak leaves on your epaulet, standing in front of the name of your base with your name tag right there, probably not a good idea. And so there of course were examples, and I'm sure we will talk about the First Amendment versus private as we go through. And then of course there's a lot of people who are like, I probably shouldn't open my mouth, but they're saying exactly what I want to say. And I think that there's going to be a lot of that too. Are there people that were centrist left or right? Mostly in this case it would be centrist left that are like, that's horrible. Absolutely. And I'm glad to see that there. It's great to see when people can realize that we are stepping past a precipice that should not be passed. And then of course you have the politicians that say it's horrible. And then my response to that is I fear the Greeks even when they bring gifts, because the people that are saying this is horrible about Charlie Kirk, you go back and everything that they have been spewing, they have been stirring the pot. And now now their political advisor is telling them, sir, ma'am, you've got to make this statement. You don't believe it, but you got to say it that way. It's on an X tweet. And they really don't believe it. And so there are people that are being disingenuine. There are people that are being genuine. But I think regardless, the extremes are bigger than they have ever been. And that this one thing only made the extremes bigger. It may have brought some people to lean a little bit more the other way, but I think that this is lighting that match and just flicking it towards that pile of gunpowder.
I think my concern here is that, like, whenever we see this kind of sentiment bubble up on social media, and I agree with what you're saying, Trek, that like what the internet and social media has done is it's given every single person a voice. But what I always wonder to myself is, like, you know how icebergs work, right? There's about that much above the surface and there's about this much below the surface. I always wonder, how big is this damn iceberg? How much of it are we seeing? Like, the part that we're seeing where people are going out on social media and rejoicing in Charlie Kirk's death and thank Christ they're losing their freaking careers. Like, we'll get to that in a second. But I'll just say that I don't personally hold it against any employer if they say, wow, I do not want in any way or shape or form to be associated with a person saying completely out of pocket things. I mean, like, there's a difference between, I espouse a socio-political ideal, and I don't think it's necessarily appropriate that a person be put out of polite society because they hold an idea. But when you're dancing on the grave of a person that was recently killed in front of his wife and kids, that's not a socio-political ideal. That's not an idea. That is like, on its face, grotesque behavior.
Well, it's calling for further violence is what it's doing.
Yes. But like I said, what I always wonder at a moment like this, and the reason I get nervous is like, this is the part we can see. How much more is below the surface that we can't see? How much more is under the surface? And it's people who, to Trek's point, maybe they're not crazy all the way to the left. They're just a little bit to left or center left. How far does this spectrum stretch to the left from center? And where's the crazy line? You follow where I'm saying? It's like whenever there's a flood, forgive my analogy, but I live down here where it floods a lot. But when it floods, when the flood waters receive, it leaves a line on the wall where you can tell how high the water came up. Well, I wonder where the line is, where the water stops. Like, is it people that are 1 degree of separation from the center that are this nuts? It's 2 degrees, is 3 degrees. How far down that road does it go? And how far do we have to go before we get to the point where people of that ilk are excited about a person getting assassinated in front of his wife and kids? Because the reason that worries me is it tells me how big of a group of people are out there. And I drew this comparison recently because somebody was really, really wound up about the fact that, like, wow, like, the left has really unmasked themselves. They've shown who they are. They're all excited about the death of this man. And my response was something they didn't see coming. I was like, do you remember during COVID? I remember during COVID. I watched people on the internet say repeatedly how people that didn't get vaccinated deserve to die, didn't deserve medical care, and should have their kids taken from them. I watched that. And no one on the right really seemed to have anything to say about it. Everybody just let that slide and go under the radar because, they really should get the shot.
No, I did see a lot of pushback on that. I saw an awful, and maybe it's your area, but I saw a ton of pushback on that.
But did you see pushback to this degree?
No, I did not.
Okay, that's my point. I didn't see pushback near to this
I also
degree.
think, here's the thing though, Phil, is you have a much more graphic representation of what they're calling for in this case. I mean, you have the video, which if any of you out there have not seen it, I've seen it. Don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
It's not worth watching.
I made a very intentional decision the day of the assassination because I went on Instagram and saw the same freaking video like 8 times. And I made a very intentional decision not to repost it on our socials. I wasn't going to have any part of that. It was, I've watched people get torn up in front of me, and it was upsetting to me to watch. I can't even imagine the fact that this man's wife and kids are going to see this for the rest of their lives because it's never going away. Anyway,
But yeah, I highly encourage you don't watch it.
please don't. Now I have to rearrange
That's all
these
right.
things because people
I would,
are.
just before you move on, I would almost respectfully disagree.
Okay.
My guys,
That's fair.
they've got, excuse me, my new bosses used to be my guys.
Mm-hmm.
They used to be a joke. They would send me videos of bad gun handling that usually ended in some sort of ND or injury. And they knew they did it
Oof.
because they knew that I would just hang my head and make my grunt sound because it just wears me out.
Yeah.
But the true reality is,
Exactly
Yeah.
like I just
Yeah.
did. Like, oof.
and it got to be a running joke, but the reality is that we as instructors, when it came to that stuff, we need it. You need to see it. And I've seen it. I've been on the line when a student decided to not look his gun into the holster and his jacket got wrapped around the trigger and he shot himself right through the leg 2 feet away from me. There's nothing I could do. I saw it. I worked on him. He's okay, but it was it's horrific. The problem there is certainly, it's awful that Mrs. Kirk, I won't call her Eric, I don't know her, but Miss Kirk and her children are that is going to be out there forever. And I hope that they can avoid it any more than they need to for legal proceedings or memorials or whatever it is that they need to do. Right. But it's out there, and that is horrible. On the flip side, anybody out there that's contemplating violence, they need to see that stuff. They need to see the Ukrainians or Russians. I don't know who they were. I don't know who they were because I watched a guy on the back of a motorcycle get blown in half by a drone that was flown by some teenager. And these people that think that war is cool. And, I grew up with the toy guns and I remember my dad being so pissed off because I loved the cap guns and this and that. And he tried, I would say, which team are they on? And he'd be like, shut your mouth. It's not a team. Those are people that are dying. It's not a team that are out there in combat. It's not cool. And, I joined the military and saw horrific things in Iraq, people getting injured and piles of bubble gum that used to be human because they got hit with artillery. And thank God it wasn't ours. It was the enemy that fired at us, and the 105 millimeters turned him into a pile of bubble gum in 30 seconds. It's horrible that it's out there, but that's the nature of today's world. I've watched it, and I'm watching it now. I've been following the Marine scout sniper instructor that's been breaking down frame by frame the different angles. And there's some really weird stuff, especially with my limited long range and ballistic experience, that make me go, something's not right. We can get into that if you want to. I know that's not the nature of the show, but the end result is the guy died, and it's horrific. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people in that crowd that loved him. And there's a lot of people in that crowd that hated him. So if you're the people in the crowd that loved him, picture that Charlie Kirk was your enemy, and picture that what happened with the blood pouring out and the panic and the look on his wife's face, and imagine what the kids are going through and what their loved ones are going through. And then, oh, by the way, they're American. And if on the flip side, do the exact same thing and realize that before you run your mouth about wanting to hurt another human being, there's the consequence. And when we have our guys that, I know some special operations guys that I was an ice cream cone vendor compared to them over in Iraq. These guys have had to go down and do ayahuasca things to try to fix the PTSD because, like Carlos Hathcock talked about, letting the guy finish a bowl of rice before you shot him to give him a last meal. You had the absolute control of the guy's life. And they talk about, Colonel Grossman talks about pilots. They blow thousands of people up. They land their airplane, they go to their bar, they drink. Very low PTSD when you're a bomber pilot. Snipers, grunts, infantry, horrible PTSD. Why? Because they just ran a guy through the bayonet.
Yeah.
They threw the frag grenade into the room. They heard the screams, and then they went in and they saw what they just did to what was a moving, bobbing, weaving human being. So I just respectfully disagree. I think, I don't want you to watch it, but I don't want to say that people shouldn't watch it, because maybe you need a reality check of the horrors of harming human beings and what a civil war or a revolution or any of the stuff that people, the delusions of grandeur. I hate quoting movies, but they put a big visual for us. And Benjamin Martin in The Patriot basically says to that Senate, understand that this war will not be fought in the frontier. It will not be fought in the woods. It will be fought in us and amongst us. And it's an incredible point, because this stuff that's going on right now, this is military operation urban terrain. This is cities and neighborhoods. It's what happened, on October 7th. It's the horrors of that kind of stuff. Just imagine, instead of a terror group that came into these kibbutzes, imagine if it was the other side and they just come into your neighborhood because it's got a bunch of Trump flags, or this side's got a bunch of Biden flags and Harris flags. And it's incredible what human beings can do. So maybe if we can get a moment of reality into people and realize, throw a fist if you got to, don't draw your gun, don't pull a knife, get your jaw broken or break somebody else's jaw, go to jail, but you didn't kill somebody. And I hope you feel better about what you did. Here's a crazy thought. Take a lesson from Charlie Kirk. Sit down, state your piece, listen to him. And if you just will never reach a common ground, go, how about we agree to disagree? You go over there, I'll go over here, and we'll never meet again. And the problem is that because we've gotten so far away from a constitutional republic where the rights, it's not a democracy, it's a republic where a majority cannot vote rights away from an individual. We've gotten so far away from that people are getting tread on. And that's incredible. Yeah. I'm not blaming the left or the right on this one. People are getting tread on both left and right, and they're realizing.
Oh no, that is absolutely on both.
Yeah, they're getting backed into a corner, and they're feeling like the only thing that I can do, because I have screamed and screamed and screamed. And oh, by the way, when I try to take BlackRock, the politicians, the U.S. government to court, they're going to bankrupt me. Listen to John Kiriakou, the CIA agent that blew the whistle on. And that's a guy that I would love to sit down and have a cup of coffee with. But this guy blew the whistle on the torture program that the Central Intelligence Agency was doing, and they bankrupted him first, then threw him in prison hey, don't ever go against us again. And it was an absolutely trumped up charge, but they bankrupted him. And his lawyers basically said, you have to take the plea deal. They're going to put you in prison, so take the plea deal, because, by the way, we're $500 an hour and you have no money. So I'm sorry, that's a long diatribe, because this is stuff that we are on a precipice as a country. If something is not done, and like I said, I just don't know if people can paddle back against the current from where we're at. I really hope we do. I hope I'm wrong about all this stuff, but the problem is human nature, combined with the propaganda machine, the misinformation, the disinformation that is being force-fed us through a fire hose, to fight each other. Instead of my sister, we are on completely different ends of the spectrum. She was here last night, and it was great because we had middle ground and then we had far ends of the spectrum. But what we did agree with is they're trying to make us do this, and it's these people right here that are just sitting there going, we're doing it perfectly, and they're not going to turn our attention or their attention to us. So, I mean, I hope you don't see the video. I hope you see the video. That's the only response I can possibly get. I can tell you that I would never sit down and watch that and go, I want to watch Charlie Kirk get shot. But it was very sobering. It was very real. And it will be something that echoes in our country for a very, very long time. And he has truly become a martyr, rightfully so, because he was the guy that was trying to say, let's just talk it out. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, and let's talk it out. And they killed him. And we'll find out who they is, hopefully. So there you go.
Trek, you make a very good point. And maybe I'm being too hasty in saying don't watch it. Mm-hmm. That's very possible. And maybe there are some people out there that do need to watch it to get the reality check of what the violence is truly doing to people.
And I knew what you meant. I mean, I know what you guys are saying. Don't see it, because if you're having a great day, and you watch a man take a round trying to talk to college students and he is dead before his body slumps over, it's horrible. It will ruin your day. It ruined my day. I didn't know the man. I listened to a couple of videos of him. It ruined my day. Absolutely ruined my day. Just kind of sat there shaking my head going, we're speeding up down a hill that we do not want to find out what's at the bottom.
I think part of the reason why it disturbed me as much as it did, beyond the situation, is that, I was up on vacation and my cousin just walks out. We had just gotten off the boats fishing for the afternoon. My cousin walks out of the cabin and says, "Hey, did you know Charlie Kirk got assassinated?" Pop it into Google, hit play on the video. It was the full video. Showed everything up close. I went from having a great day of fishing with my family to seeing that.
Sure.
I think that's part of the reason why I'm so adamant to don't watch it. It's just, it's not going to, I don't know if it's going to add to your life at all.
No, it probably will. It will change it. It will change it for the negative. And unfortunately, that can be eventually a positive if it puts perspective into your life. And so that's going to be the challenge is there, can you find horror? I hate that silver lining to reality, seeing reality. And the true reality is, pick the left person equivalent. I don't know who that is.
Right.
I would have had the same exact reaction.
Oh, it's unacceptable in any case.
100%. And that's the problem with what's going on is that we as you guys mentioned, we are dehumanizing one another, and there are people that were jumping for joy over it and not understanding the consequences, not just to themselves and their career, but just for the country. If there's an echo chamber big enough where there are people that are protesting, people that are trying to hold a vigil. Yeah, I mean it's a very telling thing for the country. Excuse me.
I think kind of what I think about this before we head over to the next thing, because Raggle Fraggle did ask us about that IG poll we ran. I think the results are interesting. I think, Trek, my concern is that the people out there who would see that video and would be sobered by it probably don't need to see it, because like they already intrinsically understand this was awful, and seeing it's going to do nothing but like for when I saw it, it's not like it changed my stripes and I thought to myself, oh damn, we really shouldn't do this. Like I already intrinsically understood that like any kind of a civil conflict is going to lead to a loss of life, and even if I don't like the people that lose their lives, they're still my countrymen. Like I understand the weight of that. And my worry is that if you show it to people who you wish would be sobered by it, they won't be. Does that make sense? Like I almost wonder if like what's the proportion in the middle of this Venn diagram who you would show it to, who would actually benefit from it, because it would make them come back from the precipice. I worry that it's almost more of a litmus test than instructional. I mean, that's my concern, at least. I know that when my wife inadvertently saw it, like she was not in a good emotional place for a couple of days. Like although she's had very different life experiences than I have and you have, but it was extremely upsetting to her. I think people, we know people across the world have been affected by this, but you know what? The horror happens every day. And Charlie was certainly a motivator for that dialogue and had done a lot of work in the political realm. But there's people, that get killed that will never have notoriety. By the way, if you're hearing what sounds like gunshots, those are acorns falling on our chicken coop. So I apologize for.
Honestly, Trek, gunshots from your house wouldn't surprise me either. I would just assumed your wife was having a late night range day.
I was going to say, if I'm sitting here and there's gunshots, I hope it's her. But yeah, thank God there's no small town law enforcement officers out there when the acorn hits the roof. That's all I'll say.
Hey man, if it's your wife that they're breaking into the house with, they're done. They're doomed.
Yeah, best of luck. Best of luck.
Exactly.
I'll put up the yellow police tape for her.
On a side note, my wife recently clued me in that there's apparently there's a caterpillar that is native to this part of the country, and its poop. She showed it to me. It was all over the ground. It's like these little bitty hard acorn looking things that are like rock hard, and apparently it flings its poop so it doesn't like pile up directly underneath where it's hiding, which would draw predators. This whole conversation came about because I was sitting on my back porch smoking my pipe and kept hearing this very loud banging noise on top of the porch. And I was like, what in the hell is that? I thought it was like squirrels or an acorn or something. My wife was like, oh no, it's this, that, and the other, or whatever Latin words for that caterpillar is. And it's flinging its poop and it's landing on the back porch.
This
is what happens when you live in the
That's actually fascinating.
That's a trip to the zoo when you stare at the wrong creatures and they get poop flung at you.
The caterpillars becoming sentient.
That's right. No, the last thing I was going to say, Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag Archipelago, there is a paragraph that I remember, and I do not have it memorized, but I can paraphrase, and it talks about the suicide of man. And he's not talking about a man taking his own life in the physical and realistic sense. It's when a guy or girl that wake up every day, they stick to the social contract of they go to work, they pay their bills, they drive down the road on the right side of the road, they have kids, they get the mortgage, they do all the stuff that we've been programmed to do. When a human being reaches a point where they commit suicide, he's referring to the fact that they have the destruction of the enemy causes them to kill the person that they were. And they're dead. The person that they were is dead because now they are a monster, and they will kill and do what is necessary to survive. And he's more talking about I think the Russian Revolution and the horrible things that happened. But that's the same thing. For someone to do this, the people that are willing to hurt a countryman, they've reached a point where they've committed suicide. Who they were is no longer there. They are not looking at their fellow countrymen as another person in the same social contract. They are looking at them as the enemy, and that's a very dangerous place. And so all of this stuff that is happening in this country is, unfortunately, some unintentional. I think a lot of it very intentional to cause.
I think it started intentionally.
Oh, I think it's still going on intentionally, 100%. But yeah, that's it always sticks in my head about what does it take for the Queen of Sparta to say, "Come home with your shield or on it." She normally, think about it, any other wife would say, "Just come home, for God's sakes, come home."
Right.
But when you have a warrior society, when you have imagine, and I'll leave this to that. Imagine what happens to the average male. And the average sex that fights wars is men. I know there's women in combat. That's fine. But imagine when the man that's on the fence is being held together to the social contract because he has the kids and the wife and the car and the mortgage. Imagine what happens when the wife says, "You know what you need to do, and I will understand and love you for it." That can make somebody go from alive to dead, the suicide, really quick. And so that's something we need to be contemplating, because the more and more that the extremes keep growing, the more social groups will say to their members, "Go for it." And you have a backing versus, "What are you doing? You've lost your mind. Why would you hurt other people?" And that's a very scary thing.
You bring that up, and we hear a little bit about online people complaining about the loneliness crisis with young men. And I think this is one of the dangers of that. You bring up perfectly, because having a wife and kids, or a wife and a house, mortgage, whatever, you have something to lose if you have a stabilizing relationship like that. A lot of these men,
you have responsibility.
A lot of these young men, they have no stabilizing relationship.
Well, in the best example in current events, people are losing their mind over this guy Mamdani in New York, the socialist. No one. Okay, that's great. Congratulations. He's got pipe dreams about really think that he's going to get, socialist. He's going to get elected, but is he really going to make New York into a socialist society? No. There's so many powers that be the capitalists that'll never allow it to happen. But no one's asking the questions. Why is he so popular? And normally the right's reaction would be, well, because they're all socialists. No. It's because the young people, and the same historical.
They feel they have no chance.
Things that we forget. After World War II, the United States didn't go socialist, but the British did. Why? Because they you couldn't have steaks during the war over there. You ate, if you were lucky, if you got Spam. Spam was like the hotness, and you couldn't have gas more than whatever the ration was for your car. If you had a car, and everything, the silk was taken for parachutes, and women didn't get their nylons. Now, granted, we had that stuff. I remember talking to my dad about that you would collect scrap metal for the war effort. Well, we weren't hurting as much as they were. That entire society was like, you know what? We haven't had anything for this whole war, so this guy is telling us that we're all going to get equal shares. And now, I mean, granted, they are on a downward slope real fast right now, but they did go from socialism to capitalism. But no one's asking the question, why? The reason is because these kids, scary, freaking, like I'm old now, but these kids, they look at this guy who's making promises that if they just read a book, they would know it doesn't work out. And every naturalized American that has come from these countries are like, what are you? No, this is horrible. You do not want socialism or communism or whatever ism you want to put on the end of it. But they're looking at, what's the interest rate right now? What are they telling me I have to make to get a house? Man, I can't find a woman that'll get off of her phone for longer than 30 seconds, and she's not even interested in me. She'd rather go out and party because someone's been telling her that she shouldn't have kids and she shouldn't get married. That's why these people are saying they're just going to go all in on a fallacy, and no one's really.
It's a comforting lie.
Yeah, and you know what? They're willing to crash the plane just to see if it'll fly. And they know.
I think a lot of them are willing to crash the plane just to see if they can end up on top of the rubble.
Oh yeah,
because what do they have to lose?
People with nothing to lose have nothing to lose.
Look at the Chinese Revolution, and you know that we kill the bourgeoisie, and then you're the next richest farmer, and now you're the next richest farmer. Well, you just killed the rich farmer, now you're the rich farmer, and they just keep killing each other, trying to stand on top of the bodies. And yeah, we know. I mean, anyone. I'm not a historian, but if you do some basic study, you know it's absolutely horrible. But that's why it's gaining momentum. It's because these kids are realizing that AI is probably going to be taking any white collar job. So then they're going to be like, well, I got to go into a trade. No, by the way, I can't afford a house. When they hear stories about grandpa who came back from the war, had his beautiful wife, 2 kids, car in the driveway, a brick house in Detroit. He worked at one of the big 3, and he retired with a pension, and his wife just took care of the kids in the house. You can't do that. Now, my God, my wife's sisters, their daycare, thank God they're doing all right, but they tell us what they're paying for their kids for daycare. I don't understand how people doing it. So, yeah, it's there's lots of things going on, but we are intentionally or unintentionally missing some very critical signs of how bad things are and how they are supporting the extreme ends of the political spectrum right now. And once they decide they've got the numbers, it's going to be a really bad day.
Yeah, definitely is.
So, cooking over to answer Raggle Fraggle's question. Cancel culture is now a 2-way range, and should it be? And I posed this question to our everybody that follows us on Instagram, and if you don't, you should. That link's in the show description. We didn't do admin work this week. Y'all get a reprieve. But 88% of the Instagram poll said resoundingly yes, that cancel culture, and I hate to use that term because I don't think it's the same thing, but we'll use it for the moment. But 88% of those polled said yes, 100% two-way range. Like, you say stupid shit on the internet, you should have consequences.
You're a constitutional libertarian. You have to say 100%. Yes. And that's because of the separation between the government and the people, and the First Amendment, what it is, and then what it's not. The thing that bothers me,
the First Amendment says the government can't put you in jail for political speech. It doesn't say your boss can't fire you for being
100%. And that's the big kicker. And, you know, when the Attorney General, who is overwhelmingly underwhelming in her job, made that stupid statement.
Thank you, Trek. Wow.
I mean, we don't even have time for all the stuff with the current administration as far as I'm concerned. But when she made the statement that they're going to start cracking down on hate speech, it's like, hey, lady, read the room. The dude that just got killed was all about the rights protected under the First Amendment. And when you, the representation of the executive branch of the government, say, well, you guys remember when Biden was in office and they were saying they're going to crack down on hate speech? Well, this is the other end of the spectrum. And they're just saying, we're going to go after the other people. Well, no, you don't have the right to do that. We know the Supreme Court's already there are limitations on the First Amendment, meaning you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire. But you have the right to be a dumbass.
You can't incite violence or panic.
Right. You have the right to be a dumbass. You have the right to suffer the consequences. What bothers me the most when I hear these stories about, the guy, the guy's name is Adolf, and he's got a cake factory, and it's called Adolf's Nazi Cakes. And then someone gets all offended and sues Adolf and his little Nazi cakes because he won't make them a transgender cake that says, happy homosexual anniversary. Well, I want Adolf to be able to say and make an advertisement on a billboard saying we make Nazi cakes, because you know what I can do? I can go, that's a shop I'm not going to patronize.
Exactly.
I need him. I need him to do that. And then we as a society say, I'm sorry, but you're unacceptable. The government should not be able to come in and say, no, Adolf, you got to make that transgender cake. That's completely out of line. But everybody should be like, that dude's a douchebag. Why would give? And you know what? Let's say
he's not making any cakes.
Well, and let's say that maybe he gets business from 10 Nazis who just keep ordering cakes from Adolf. If Adolf can make his living making these cakes for 10 freaking Nazis, you know what? Rock and roll. But you know what? The cake guy, Johnny, I love everybody, who will just make the cake you asked and maybe has some criteria saying I'm not going to use vulgarities. Can't have anything. He has policies, and the policies just basically say, for my well-being, I'm just not going to put vulgarities on the cake. You can go elsewhere if you don't like it, but just because you say the cake says I love Charlie Kirk or Charlie Kirk must die, the government should not be able to come in and shut him down. We the people can say you're out of line and we're not going to patronize you. There are people that make a living by being kind of shock jocks. They piss off half the country, and the other half of the country patronize them, and they make plenty of money. But guess what? The other half go to another vendor. And you know what? They think that this person's a douchebag, but you know what? They're not threatening their lives, and they're not threatening their lives. And so this is the problem. We're gone from the days where you would talk to everybody like you're sitting across the table. And if you said, hey, your mom is sleeping around, you'd get punched in the mouth. And everyone would be like, you deserved it. Mm-hmm. Don't even bother calling the police, because we're going to say you absolutely deserved it. But now everybody feels like now that you can say whatever you want, and the government needs to protect you from the big meanies that are going to hold you accountable for what you said. I think I was taught, you guys were probably taught, if you have nothing nice to say, shut your mouth. I can think it all I want, and if I am going to say it, be ready to back it up with physical force if you're going to protect yourself, or a lawyer, or bank account because you're about to get unemployed. But is it worth it? Is running your mouth worth it? If it's not, shut your mouth. If you think it is, you have the right to say what you want. You're going to own it. And in today's day and age, the worst part is you can't be like, oh, I never said that, because they're going to be like, screenshot.
Absolutely.
And it's never going to go away. So, I mean, that is the battle of the constitutional libertarian, right? Yeah. The government, no. Pam Bondi has no right to tell me what I can and cannot say. The whole Trump, you can't burn the flag. Hell yes, I can burn the flag.
Yes, you absolutely
never burn the American flag. I will burn the American flag for a ceremonial retirement of the flag, and I will do it properly. But how dare you freaking tell me I can't burn the flag? I will burn the flag whenever the freaking I want to. I went and almost died. People that I knew got injured, and people that I don't know died to be an American, to protect the American way of life. So, that's the problem is we went full spectrum. It's like we had can't say a sentence to save his life, lost his mind president who should have been removed in the 25th Amendment. And now we got a guy that, of course, got elected because the only alternative was awful. And he was like, this is great, and went full potato to stop and frisk is great, and burning the American flag is illegal, and all the other stupid stuff that's coming out now. So, yeah, it's, I think the people on Instagram were absolutely right. That's just my take on it.
I think we run into the same problem with the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. Freedom is dangerous. You have the freedom. You can choose to do constructive things or destructive things, and we will reward or punish you based on your choice.
Mm-hmm. I think what blows me out of the water about this weird time period we live in is that we live in an era where it is A-okay to burn the American flag, but you get put in jail for burning an LGBTQ flag. And that's where I get a little case of Forrest Whitaker eye. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
and that I don't know how it's even made it past constitutional muster.
Because it's declared a hate crime, which all crimes are hate crimes.
First of all,
unless you're stealing
all
property.
crimes are hate crimes, and the only reason you have to have a First Amendment is to protect hate speech in this country. You don't have to protect popular speech. There's no reason to. It's like having a Second Amendment to make sure that the government can have guns, because the government can have guns regardless of the Second Amendment. They're the motherfucking government. That's how it works. It's like, whew. But anyway, what frustrates me, guys, is that I'm not going to say like I'm okay with whatever set of rules we want to live by as society, because there are certain rules I think are stupid and we should debate them. But I get really, really, really torqued up when the rules don't work in both directions. Like, you can burn an American flag, but you can't burn a gay pride flag. That's not okay with me, because if it's going to be one way, it's got to be both ways. And we can debate if it should be, but it's got to work all the way around. And that's where, when we start having discussions about the government stepping in to tamp down hate speech, it's like, okay, but who gets to decide what's hate speech? Because that's a power I'm not comfortable giving to the government that changes hands every so often, because the same watchful eye they cast upon what you consider hate speech, they're going to cast upon your speech in a year.
Well, so the issue is, it comes down to faith in the system, and this is a challenge.
I have none.
I'll be honest, I think you do. I know what you mean. And here's why. Because you guys take the time out of your day to talk about these issues. If you truly didn't believe or have any faith in the system, you'd have grabbed a rifle. You'd have done whatever you feel like you need to do, because you're not being represented. And so I'll give you a great example. So, the faith in the system is, and this came to a very interesting discussion that I had with Alan Normandy, who is the owner and CEO of Battle Comp Industries. Most people don't know him if you watch Mythbusters. And every time the Mythbusters went out to the Alameda Range to blow something up, he was the lieutenant that was always kind of talking with them. That's Alan Normandy. Cool. And I was sitting next to Alan when he told me this, and I finally was like, "Oh my God, that's you!" Right? So he's an awesome dude. Mentor.
He is a pretty cool dude.
He is a cool dude. Mentor of mine. He's kind of one of those guys that when he talks, you just listen, because he's got some sage advice. And during the Boston bombing, I was livid about the SWAT teams going into people's homes. When there was no probable cause nor reasonable articulatable suspicion other than there's a bomber somewhere in the city. And they just started going into doors and pointing guns at families, even though the families were like, the doors are locked, there's no one in here. They were like breaching doors and going in. And I said, this is an absolute violation of the Fourth Amendment. And now the police were claiming, no, exigent circumstances, very, national security, blah, blah, blah. And Alan, not publicly, but kind of he called me and we talked, and he goes, "Hey dude, here's the deal." He goes, "If you think any cop goes through their entire career that wants to be a good cop and they do everything constitutional," he goes, "it's not possible. You're a human being." He goes, "The beauty of the checks and balances and the judicial review that we have is that there will be mistakes." And there were. After the Boston bombing, there was a lot of review about what happened, and some things were validated. Some things were said, you guys can't do that again. But then the court also said, there is an understanding of why you did what you did. It was wrong, but you didn't have hostile or ill intent when you did it. And so if I don't know where it is where a gay pride flag can't be burned, I don't know if that's federal or if it's a state, but the reality is that someone needs to burn the flag with no hostile intent towards anybody, but for whatever reason they choose to burn the flag and they get cited or arrested, and it has to go up to the court, the appeals court, the district court, whatever, and to the Supreme Court of the United States. And if there's faith in the system, and we can say that it is legal to burn the United States flag, our colors, well, that's our nation's flag and it's legal. The faith in the system should say, and I don't think it's happened yet, they'd be like, it is unconstitutional to arrest somebody for burning this piece of cloth that is not even a nationally recognized country flag, right? So if we get to that point where it is truly rules for thee and not for me, and there are lots of examples of that, but the beautiful thing is, and it's always aggravating when you have an administration that is doing egregious things to the Constitution, but then they are fighting legal battles of great things that were done wrong to the American people. The ATF recently is a great example. They're like, we're not even going to push the case further because, what they're saying is the new administration does not agree with the lawsuit from the previous administration, so we are losing the case intentionally. That is a great example of it, because they know if they were to go to the Supreme Court's going to be like, we've slapped you around so many times, you're going to lose. But the other administration was doing it just to tie them up and bankrupt them and make a big political spectacle about the whole thing. So what I mean by faith in the system is, if it truly is where no matter what, the judicial body of the United States will not look at the Constitution and actually do their due diligence, it is time to grab rifles. We are not there. We are not there.
I agree.
So that's
fair.
it. I mean,
I think Phil, what Phil means by when he said that he doesn't have faith in the system, he has very little faith in the people that are currently in the system.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And that's the benefit is.
Let me correct you very slightly. And Trek's right. I'm still clinging to a tiny little shred of, like, I would say, autistic optimism at this stage. But, like, what frustrates me about the system is, y'all know that, like, my big passion project for over a decade has been screaming and yelling bloody murder on the internet about the Second Amendment. My views are not hard to figure out. Anybody that's curious, just let your fingers Google. And I'm not hard to figure out in a nutshell. I think you ought to be able to buy RPGs out of a vending machine. If that's not your thing, that's cool. That's everybody's entitled to their opinion. But all that being said, what frustrates me is that in that one tiny little microcosm, I've watched our courts from local to Supreme Court slice and dice that issue every which way they can to make these tiny, narrow-ass little rulings that in the totality of circumstance don't make sense when you add them up together. Like our legal landscape of gun laws across this country is insanity. And yet I continue to watch the system hold its hands over its eyes and do everything humanly possible not to admit that the plain text of the Second Amendment says exactly what it says in the most sociopathic, retarded way humanly possible, over and over and over. So when I say I have little faith, my worry, Trek, is that I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. In a world where our government functioned properly and our court system wasn't run by ideologues of both stripes, then yes, I'm confident that we could come to an agreement that you could burn flag A and flag B, or not burn flag A and flag B, and then we could debate whether or not that's the correct standard, but it would at least apply both directions. I am struggling with faith at this point, though, because I feel like they would find a way to rule to divide those two things into different categories, so you could burn flag A but not flag B, and which way the ruling went would depend on what damn court it wound up in. Or in the case of the Supreme Court, it would depend on who happened to be on the bench at the time. And like I feel like our judicial system, which, to be perfectly honest, has turned into the de facto legislative branch because legislators won't do their damn jobs anymore. But like we've come to the point where they are ruling based on opinion rather than rationality and legality. And that's why my faith.
Well, yeah, it's tough. Diminished. I mean, when a Supreme Court justice makes a ruling, it is they are making their opinion on their interpretation of the Constitution, right? And so, make no mistake, too. And the faith in the system doesn't have to be the government either. And I'll give you a great example. When someone says they have faith, generally people go, they're religious. I would think most people would agree with that. Well, I am not a religious man. I have a lot of faith. My faith is in my friends, family, countrymen, neighbors, and they all vary on different levels of what that faith is. So faith in the system is also, and what I love is American ingenuity. They make these silly laws. It is getting fought in the judicial, but then you have companies like Franklin Arsenal that is like, oh, by the way, we read exactly what you said, and we've just designed a .223 rifle designed to fire multiple projectiles with barrels under 12.5 inches. Thereby, it fits the definition of neither a rifle nor a short barrel rifle. It is a firearm. And then the ATF fights it, and a lower level justice is like, yeah, they got you there, man. And that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, that one was pretty good.
So that is the American. I mean, we fight. We as Americans, we don't like the crown. That's in our nature. But also, we have to understand that the country will change, and the amendments to the Constitution can be overridden, and it does take a hell of a lot to make that happen. And the forefathers knew that. And you and I, and the three, we all might say, well, I hope I'm not alive if they overturn the first or the second or the fourth, whatever the amendments might be. But the nation at that time will have been the majority and met that legal requirement. I hope it never happens. But that is just the reality. So I have faith in the system enough that I'm not fighting the system, but I also have faith enough in the system that Americans, what's our first thing? Civil disobedience, organization, protesting, writing our representative officials saying you will not be in office. My dream is that we actually, as a country, come together and create a third party called the Steward Party, which is a bunch of people that say we are not actually going to do anything other than a full review. We're going to get in office and we're going to do a full review of these two Yahoo groups that have been running it. And we're going to be stewards, get the country back on track, and then pass it on. I just have this dream where we could actually do something like that. It'll never happen because we're too partisan, but that's my dream, right? And that's because we have the ability to do it. I just don't know if we can come together enough to do it. But I have faith in the system, not just enough in the government overall, the checks and balances, but I have great faith that Americans they're not going to let homes be unaffordable for very long. They're not going to allow the economy to keep getting where it's at. You're not going to be able to tell the majority of Americans that this boy calls himself a girl and now he can go in with your daughters and change his clothes. At the same time, I have enough faith that Americans will be like, that's cool that your kid wants to be a chick and you can love him for it. And as long as he doesn't hurt anyone, that's fine. But he's not going in with my kid and he's not going to be spiking the ball into my daughter's face 100 miles an hour because he's 8 feet tall and all the girls are 5 feet tall. And that's we're seeing it right now. We're seeing a lot of things swing the other way because it reached a point where enough Americans said, no, this is getting ridiculous. So yeah, it's a tough one, but we have to, if we're all sitting here, we have a little bit of faith in the system. Otherwise, why would I be wasting my time with two friends? I wouldn't have a social media platform. I'd be out there, in cahoots. I'd be plotting, but right now I have enough faith in the system to say, let's do all the other things before grabbing a rifle because we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
No, I agree. We absolutely are not there
fair.
yet.
Yeah. Especially for all of you feds listening, we're not there yet.
So we're still at the soapbox and voting box or ballot box.
I would rather never see it get to the cartridge box stage. Just
I would also prefer we not get to the cartridge box stage because, Trek, you said earlier you're not a historian, but I kind of feel like in 2025 there's enough information available that anybody that wants to be a historian can be, and I'm sure you've read a lot of it. Like, I've read enough history, and I'm sure Nick has too, that like we all know how modern civil wars end up breaking down in moderately or highly urbanized
Spanish
areas.
Civil War is probably the best example of it in semi-modern times. Bosnia, Croatia. Let's see, what was the other one? Serbia, Egypt.
That's kind of where I was going, was that in the last 30 years, we've seen a handful. I mean, admittedly, not like on the scale of what the United States would be because of population and size, but we've seen enough urban, modern civil wars to know it would be god awful. And I'd really love for us to be able to not get to that point in my lifetime. I'd rather we figure out a way to walk back from this precipice. I guess I'll just continue to struggle with my own emotions and my own faith. But it is difficult because, damn it, these freaking people. Oh, we have comments. Stewart, we're not starting over. Sorry. Stewart always comes in about 45 minutes to an hour after we start and then says start over. And we never have.
He's like Gandalf. He's like, wizard is never late. He always arrives right on time.
Yeah, Stewart is never technically late. We're here in spirit. He'll correct me on something I said tomorrow in the Patreon chat.
Oh, well, I mean, he's correcting me on things I said 7 and 8 years ago. So
accurate. Well, you were the fool that put up the old episodes again for him to go through and critique.
Well, to be fair, I put them up for all of y'all to enjoy again. I wasn't expecting the crotchety old fart to take it as his mission in life to drag me in front of everybody repeatedly.
Line for line fact
Line
checks.
for line fact
Hey man,
checks.
he keeps us running straight, man. It's good to
If
have.
he could figure out technology, he'd start his own podcast, and I could retire.
Oh, I would listen to that. That dude has educated me on more miscellaneous stuff. It is wild.
Somebody said the 223 version is still, for now, is still an SBR. I was gonna say,
I heard the 410 is the one that's technically a firearm.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, do y'all remember? Was it Palmetto State Armory, or I forget who it was, but some years ago they were gonna put out, like, wasn't a smoothbore AR-15 specifically
There was talk
to
of that, yeah.
to jerk the ATF around?
Franklin was the one that did the straight rifling with the small football size projectiles.
That's what it was.
It's one of those, ain't no one serious going to buy it, but kudos for you for doing the American ingenuity to basically say, we can design around whatever silly verbiage you put in. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, good. I mean, I was like, kudos. I love it when someone shows the government their ass. At the same time, I'm like, oh, they're going to shut you down. But that's
you're going to spend some time and money on lawyers.
But
that's basically what's happened with all the binary triggers and the FRTs, was that somebody literally sat there and studied all of our gun laws, said, I found margin, and started writing in the margin. And, to their credit, they had to spend a lot of time standing in front of lawyers and judges to convince the government. But that being said, and since we tripped into a gun conversation, let's round out the last of this. I have to throw these last two bullet points up quickly, though, because they kind of go into each other. So the gun control narrative has been turned on its head because the shooter used a bolt action. And in the same vein, lefties say Kirk was pro-Second Amendment, so he deserved this, which I have to admit is probably the most retarded take I've heard throughout this whole thing, was basically people shouting over and over and over, this is why we need gun control, because too many people have guns.
Well,
and yet the shooter used, an 80-year-old bolt-action Milser?
A retooled Mauser, probably a World War II era Mauser. Yeah.
But my point is, I know they're all screaming and yelling right now that it was a sniper rifle, so we need to ban them. But it's like, I'm sorry. I'm 42 years old, guys. I've been listening to at least a solid 20 years of hysteria over AR-15s, and all of a sudden, we have this high-profile thing that doesn't fit the narrative about AR-15s being used for mass shootings, but they still go straight to, but we need gun control.
Well, this won't be the first podcast I've said this on, but here's my take on using a tragedy and a murder, a crime, like what happened to Charlie Kirk, for a demonization or a gotcha moment for the Second Amendment. I've made my living the past 15 years as a firearms instructor. I was in the profession of arms in the military for nearly a decade. If you see me, I probably got a blaster on. I've got bathroom MP5 and shower Uzi and everything else an American should have. But the reality is, if I'm murdered tomorrow with a bow and arrow, an old Mauser, an Uzi, an AR-15, I will haunt anybody that tries to take away the rights of the rest of my countrymen because I got killed with a gun. That's the dangerous freedom that was talked about. Deserved neither freedom nor or security or liberty, as a paraphrase quote went. When I was in Iraq, we had a rule of engagement. Every Iraqi was allowed, every Iraqi family was allowed to have an AK-47. They could have 130 round magazine for defense. But we had rules of engagement that if we saw anyone with an RPG, dragging off, scoped weapon of any kind, it was a shoot on sight engagement if they were an Iraqi military age male. I was more terrified in a guard tower of a guy with a PSL with a dragon off that knew what he was doing, than a guy with an AK-47 and full auto with a PCAM, whatever it might be, because generally when someone's got a rifle like that, they know they have limited ammo, and they've probably trained for it, unless someone just handed it to them and said, make good life choices, which generally isn't the case. A gun, Charlie Kirk could have been killed with a crossbow. He could have been killed with a spear. If the person had the ability, opportunity, and the intent to do it, it could have happened. His bodyguards, I guarantee you, were armed. The police were armed. The shooters, whatever we're going to find out, had a window. They took it. Security wasn't covering that. But I guarantee you, if the guy had rushed Charlie with a handgun, he probably would have found out something about the Second Amendment from his security detail. If they had a counter sniper, just like what happened in, as far as we know, what happened in Pennsylvania. I mean, that was a great example of, you got the right to carry this gun the moment you commit a crime with it. Oh, by the way, here's some Second Amendment coming at you in a 338 Lapua Magnum, right, or whatever, 300 Win Mag, whatever the rifle was that was used. Yeah, that is a great. It's a great. They feel good because they say it. Oh, he was pro Second Amendment, and that bit him in the rear end. The Second Amendment doesn't say anything about you have the right to murder people. It says that you have the right to protect against tyranny. Tyranny also includes murdering you, and you have the right to have a firearm to stop the murder of you and your family and your countrymen and innocent life and yada yada yada. And I guarantee, if Charlie Kirk was alive today, he would say, "Don't anybody try to take away somebody's Second Amendment rights just because I will die or have died from a firearm wound." I still have some issues with the weapon that we're being told was used, and it's not because the capability of an old Mauser. There's some other issues that go with it, but 200-yard shot is not hard. A 200-yard shot is not hard.
I can put a novice shooter behind just about any rifle and have them pulling headshots at 200 yards within an hour. It's not difficult.
Yeah. The gun argument with just like any other murder. I mean, it's amazing how politicians they'll say, "Look what Charlie Kirk said. We should take away the Second Amendment rights." And then when Chicago is getting shot up by illegally stolen Glocks with switches that are coming in from Temu, they blame it on me, the guy that went through all the 4473, the ATF 52, all the Form 1s, the Form 4s, the Form 3s, all that stuff, my fingerprints, what DNA swabs, whatever it is that they're going to be doing tomorrow, so I can lawfully have my, special cool guns. It's amazing. And that's that, I don't trust the Greeks even when they bring gifts. Politicians, when they start clamoring that stuff, they're just doing it for clickbait or votes and leaning on the emotional, the lack of emotional control from members of their constituency. But this was not a Second Amendment issue. This was a bad guy with a gun in a country where there's the most guns in the world managed to get a good shot on a really good guy, and nobody got him beforehand. And that's just the way it is. But we should not.
Did we lose track?
Hopefully not. Oh, that was going on.
No, you're good now.
Frozen. But
I've said this before and I'll say it again. The guns aren't the problem because, look, if I wanted to, I could go down to the hardware store right now and I could build a bunch of IEDs. It is not complicated. It is not difficult to make something to do violence with.
In Minecraft?
No. I think anybody could do it. It's not difficult. It doesn't matter if it's in Minecraft or not. It's not difficult. The knowledge is out there. The tools are out there. Why don't I do it? Because I'm not an evil person. Right. I'm not looking to target other people.
Former Japanese prime minister was shot with basically a modern electric fire muzzle loader.
Exactly.
Drive-bys on bicycles are being done in London with slam fire single shot 12 gauge made out of steel water pipe, or iron water pipes. So
acid attacks in Paris.
Right.
The acid attacks in Europe. Cutting open a bunch of batteries, harvesting the acid, or grabbing Drano and throwing it in somebody's face. An evil person is going to find a way to do evil.
Let's go on a bigger scale, though, and talk about like the Oklahoma City bombing. It was basically a truck full of fertilizer and
ammonium nitrate fertilizer. You can buy that at your local garden center.
Yes. Not that I want to espouse too much of that, but like let's just leave it at.
Oh, it's a little more complicated than just bags of fertilizer, but
it's not. It's not so much more complicated that a determined individual couldn't figure it out.
No.
I mean,
and that's my point, though, Phil. That's my point. Is that regardless of what we take away, you cannot take away all of the basic tools that make modern life possible, and a lot of those basic tools that make modern life possible can also be used to do terrible violence.
It's been said on more than one occasion by more than one person that the only way to remove guns from society is to take away the knowledge of how to build guns. And like Trek.
Best of luck. You need tool makers to make your medical stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Trek's been on the show time and time again, repeatedly saying you can't stop the signal. But like the truth of the matter is that somewhere buried in a book in the back of a dusty library will always be a book that tells you how guns work. And like, this is the conversation I've had with people that don't know a lot about firearms. Like people think when I talk to them about reloading my own ammo, they think it's witchcraft or like it takes an industrial estate. And I'm like, no. It just takes this little press and these little dies. And like, you just smash stuff together and you have bullets. And they think that's black magic. But
if you really want to, you can do it with a C-clamp.
That's true. But the same thing applies to firearms to a degree. When I explain to people how firearms work, I'm like, it's not really as complicated as you think it is. I mean, I don't want to oversell it and say you could like whittle a gun out of a piece of wood, but I have seen an AR-15 loader that was made out of a block of wood, and it worked. So, I mean, it's not that far out of pocket.
These situations are always complicated with a lack of understanding of the subject at hand. I mean, we've seen it. I don't think we need to dive into it. There is so much bad info coming out about everyone trying to Monday morning quarterback, the film. People have clearly never shot a rifle. They don't know anything about soft or hard body armor. I mean, that's fine. We don't need to get into it, but that is, I may be a subject matter expert on firearms instruction, and I'd like to think I'm pretty damn good at diagnosing, ascertaining shooting techniques, and I can pretty much work on most of my guns blindfold. I built things with Dremels, but then you say, hey, let's go talk about Bitcoin, and I start drooling and my eyes cross. So everybody has a topic or topics that they're just not. And it's important that in those situations, you don't walk up to the front of the airplane when you have no flight experience and try to give the pilot advice. And a lot of times that happens and people just can't say, I really don't know. Let's, lean on some experts that can actually give some great, info. Brandon Herrera, I'm really surprised in all my SHOT Show travels. I never even met him. But right after Trump's attempted assassination, he did the gel head to try to to dissuade all the crap about the wound to the president's ear. And it was done very tastefully, and in my opinion, it was done very, very well. But yeah, there's a lot of bad information out there, and you can't stop the signal. 3D printing. So I'll leave it this. There's two ways I look at it, and people have asked me, would you ever give up your guns? And I said, yes, I will. Here's my criteria. No bad guys can ever have them, and the government can't have them. And if you can prove to me that they can't and they can't, then I will give up my guns. But we know, of course, that will never happen. So the answer is unequivocally not a chance in hell. But yeah, the reality is people think that by laws or by signs that we're going to be able to create safe places, and that we know that's not true. And I've always joked that one of a really interesting experiment that I would love to do that I can't do, of course, because it would be wrong in every way, is to have an interrogation room and have, law enforcement there, and you have the other side that's all pro gun control, and me that's gun proliferation for good people, and say, all right, this is a gun free zone. And I get patted down and they get patted down. And we sit down and I say, would you agree this is a gun free zone? We were just checked. And they say, yes. And I draw a gun and shoot them right in the face. That's the experiment, and maybe with an NLTA round, to get the point across that cops are human, politicians are human, politicians are corrupt, cops be corrupt, people are good, people are bad. You cannot take someone, and there's going to be somebody that the consequences of the law, they do not care about. And they will die as the consequence of their action. But they're going to get the crime out of the way, and if you're not prepared for it, there's nothing you can do. I'm with the executive protection work that I've done. I can only imagine. I'm glad my clients are very low profile, but there's always a threat assessment that's done if we're going somewhere with them, and then we work to fill in those gaps the best that we can. I can only imagine what Charlie's team has as far as a threat assessment, and of course we know. Now, especially if it's been more disclosed about how many people were rallying for his death. There's a lot of things about that I am surprised that they were like, hey, let's do this open air thing when there's only 6 law enforcement, no spotters on the roof. But that's all. I can't money.
But that was Charlie's thing, though.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying.
His whole deal the entire time has been doing. open air in front of all the student body.
No, I'm not dogging their team. I am not dogging this. I don't know enough about it. But the reality is,
I don't know that Charlie would have done it a different way.
He very well may not have. And that is a choice that he certainly had the right to make. But the reality is, you could put, as we found out, and I got issues with that too, but you can put the former president, soon to be president of the United States, with counter snipers and counter assault team guys, and somehow a kid gets on a roof and fires a shot. And so, I don't know who said it, but it was when Reagan was shot. If the person is willing to give their life in the commission of the crime, not even the president of the United States is safe. There was a guy that walked out of the crowd walking down the street in Washington to George H.W. No, excuse me, G.W. and literally walked right up to him to hand him a pin. And basically, the president was kind of shell-shocked, took the pin, shook the guy's hand, and then the Secret Service tackled the dude. But he walked right out of the crowd, right up to the guy. And if it had been an attempt, it would have been all over before anybody could act. So the reality is, I need the people to have the rights afforded, and the rights protected under the Second Amendment. They are afforded by whether it's our maker or natural law or just being the fact that you're a human being, and especially an American. We need people to have that right because it's the only chance you got. Charlie had a chance with an armed security team. Had a chance. If he had been by himself with no security, probably, and he was not armed, he would not have had a chance. If he alone was on stage and had a gun, he had a chance. He had a chance. And so that's all I'm looking for in my life is give me the chance. If I die in an ambush, if the person is better than me, let me die with brass casings all over the ground, me running out of ammo and trying to use my handgun as a club. Hopefully I've snapped my knife off and broken it in the attacker. And just like some Marines that fought and died in Vietnam, they were found with their e-tools dead next to the guys that they had crushed their skull with it because they had run out of ammo, they had run out of hand grenades, and they just fought to the damn death. That's a mindset thing, but don't take away the ability to have the tools. And so that whole the demonization of the Second Amendment, it's more a cry for the rights protected under the Second Amendment, what happened to Charlie Kirk, as far as I'm concerned.
Trek, we got a question from the audience here for you. It's got a friend in Bozeman, Montana, looking to get some medical and first aid training. I said, I know MDFI is not nationwide, but do you know somebody in the area that does that?
Yeah, so we actually don't do medical here in Michigan. We bring in our mentors, which is Dark Angel Medical. They're from Colorado. So they do classes in Colorado. But if you're in the Montana area, I believe I'd reach out to Joe at Tactical Wisdom. I don't know if Joe does medical, but he is in a big circle of like-minded instructors, and he is now in Montana near Kalispell. I believe he's doing a lot of stuff, kind of working with the Shield Arms crew, and I guarantee he knows who he would recommend if you're in the Montana area. But if you feel like a trip to beautiful...
What was the name of the company again, Trek?
I actually don't know if his company... I think it's Tactical Wisdom, the company, but he is Tactical Wisdom on X and Instagram. His first name's Joe. And he's in the circle in Montana. He's been doing the Shield Arms Shield Days, and next year I'll actually be out there doing a use of force, and I'll get a chance to actually meet him in person. So I'm excited about that.
I didn't think y'all were gonna deviate from what I figured y'all would when that came up, but I don't know. When I saw that blast all across the internet, and I wrote in a book a long time ago something about sniper rifle laws. And a couple people at the time, years ago when American Insurgent got published, thought that was prophetic. But I guess I kind of looked at it as the natural progression of the narrative, because we have to find a way to ban something tomorrow, because that's the inevitable path of gun control. It's in the name progressive. Yeah, they must push forward. It's AR-15s today. It'll be handguns tomorrow. It'll be sniper rifles after that. It's always going to be something until we're back to using spears and sticks, and then they'll ask us to file the ends of those off. There is no end result to this except progress forward. It's not even progress towards a goal. It's just progress forward. I mean, look at the nonsense that's going on in Canada and the UK right now. There's no rational.
Yeah, Canada. I read Summer summer side of life there. So I can't imagine, Canada, people are like, oh, you can have anything you want in Canada. It's like, yeah, you can have like a 40 millimeter grenade launcher, but you can't use it for defense. And there's storage things. And I remember Les Stroud from Survivor Man. I used to watch that show religiously. He had this cool little 410, like short barrel shotgun. I'm like, how's he got that? He's in Canada. He's out in the bush there in Canada. But, the UK is a great example of you're not supposed to have pointy knives and machetes. Guess who has them? All the bad guys walking around. And if you defend yourself like that in Ireland, that young lady that pulled out like the axe and the knife because her and her sister had been harassed by, thugs. And of course they arrested her, right? It is illegal to defend yourself in the UK. Yep. I mean, and that's the worst part about it, of course, are the politicians. But the worst part about it is look at, and I've got friends from the UK. I don't mean any disrespect to that, but here is a nation that ruled the world. And you know how they did it? Through guns. You could walk around the Sherlock Holmes and Watson. He had a sword cane. He was a veteran of the Afghan war. They carried their bulldog revolvers in the books. And of course, then it just stopped. And it's been, a self-defense free zone for a long time. And they're on the outs. I mean, they have fallen so far from the nation that they were. And it was the death of 1,000 cuts. They kept, as Phil pointed out, they take the point off your kitchen knives. You can't have guns. They say no sharp sticks. And oh, by the way, no stick now over 2 feet, because if it's 3 feet, you can whack somebody on the head. No shillelaghs anymore. Take away the old folks' walking sticks because they could be used as a defensive weapon. But then zero consequence for those that violate because they're of an immigrant status or of a political party. So we won't prosecute them, and it's there. I don't know how much longer the UK and some of the other countries, Germany. I've heard horrible things about a lot of European countries from people that live there. That it's unrecognizable, and we are on that path if we do not correct. The good thing is how ingrained self-defense is in the American, in our history. So it'll take a lot more. A lot of countries like Australia, when they did the big push for, I think it was like anything but a bolt action rifle and maybe a break action shotgun or something like that. They were kind of like, yeah, we really appreciate, let's have this stuff for that, this many decades. So here you go, here's it back. Versus us, we're like, my grandpappy carried a gun and my dad carried a gun and I'm carrying a gun. And if you want it, come get it. Bullets first. I mean, and that's just a different mindset of being an American, right? So, yeah, that's really tragic when you hear horrible stories from people that in any U.S. constitutional use of force, they would have absolute right to burn the bad guys down, but they defend themselves and then they get thrown incarcerated and their lives ruined over it. So,
yeah, I think kind of echoing back to something that you had said earlier, though, was that like we're not at the point of the cartridge box yet. But I kind of feel like that's where a lot of these other countries are heading.
Yeah, the UK is there.
When you get to the point where the average citizen is carrying around an axe to freaking protect themselves from roving gangs so that they don't get, assaulted.
So they don't get sex trafficked, because that's what it was going to be for those two girls. Let's be honest.
But
here.
I feel like you're at a tipping point where, like, if the political machine does not recognize that they are pushing these people to a point where they're going to pop and the reaction is going to be ugly and it's going to be directed directly at them, it's like the age old adage of like, why do our politicians only act up a little bit? Because there's only so many of them and there's 300 million of us. And if they ever did something to piss off all 300 and something million of us, their existence as human beings would extinguish. Like if they ever did something so egregious that the entire country wanted their hides, there'd be no stopping the people from deposing them from power. There is no assembly, there is no machine, there is no military, there's not enough feds, there's not enough of their people to protect them from 300 million pissed off Americans. And I feel like that's where a lot of these other countries are heading.
Modern governments are taking a lesson from the Caesars. Give them bread and circus. Games, the gladiator games were to satisfy and rock. and channel the anger and bloodlust of a population that was either starving or poor, and basically just give them, make them either fat or happy, or direct all of that anger elsewhere. And that's all. It's give them bread or circus is exactly what's happening now in the bread and circus for us.
Why do you think they're relaxing gambling laws
and marijuana laws?
It's the same reason during COVID, when you're locking people down and taking away their freedoms, that you allow, my firearms training company is not, even though it's a training based on rights protected on the Second Amendment, that's not essential. Construction equipment is not essential, but booze and pot is essential. Why? Give them bread and circus.
Strip clubs.
Drunk and stoned.
No, I actually did hear an argument for why keeping the liquor stores open was a good idea, and
lay it on me.
It actually made a lot of sense. So I got a buddy who's a nurse, okay, intensive care nurse. And the way he broke it down for me with the liquor stores was, okay, so we have a pandemic, the ERs are full, intensive care wards are full. You have now stripped the 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 Americans who require alcohol to function on a daily basis. You've now taken away their alcohol. Now they are all in withdrawals. Where do we put them?
Yeah.
Where do you put them? And I hate to say it, convinced me why the liquor stores needed to stay open, at least for that.
Yeah, it's it is the classic. If you forget history, you are doomed to repeat it. And we're staring right at lessons of empires that fell, and we're going, oh man, that'll never happen to us. It's like, bro, you're literally doing the checklist.
Yeah,
you are step by step.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I'm running out of gas. I expected this to be kind of an emotional unpacking, because it's been an emotional last week and a half of everybody's life in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, guys, like the things I've seen in the last 10 days, and to wrap this up, I kind of want to hear y'all's thoughts on this briefly, but like the things I've seen in the last 10 days have been combination of extraordinarily sobering, upsetting, worrying, and some tiny little glimmer of hope when I saw what I expected was, I expected for some people to dance on Charlie Kirk's grave. I fully expected that, especially after what I saw during COVID. Like I figured that was coming. I've been pleasantly surprised at the sheer volume of normal everyday people screaming in the opposite direction, saying that's not okay. Whether you like the man or not is irrelevant. That's not okay. And that's been a silver lining to all this, is that like some tiny shred of my faith in humanity has been restored. But I don't know where we go from here, and I kind of wonder where we'll go. But I mean, how do y'all feel about this? I mean, is that tiny little glimmer of optimism founded?
I think that in this case, I think we need that optimism a little bit. We need to think that it can be made better, so that we continue working towards making it better. I can't say I'm terribly surprised at the people that I am seeing making the comments celebrating a political assassination. Can't say I'm surprised at those people. Those are the people I would have expected it from. Even the people in my personal life that I've seen it from, they're exactly who I would have expected it from. What I did not expect was the number of non-politically active individuals that came out of the woodwork to condemn it and to say that it was unacceptable. And that I like to see. I hope it has awakened some of them and alerted some of them to what has been going on, has kind of knocked them out of their stupor in order to say, hey, I need to start paying attention and I need to start being more engaged. And if it does, and say, midterms come up and things go in a positive direction, and the next election comes up and things go in a positive direction, maybe we can slowly bring ourselves back to rights without things deteriorating further. That's the way I hope it goes. Honestly, I don't have a prediction. I really don't. I wish I did. Trek, what do you got?
Oh, if I had a prediction, you'd call me Nostradamus, and I'd just tell you exactly who's going to win the lottery next week.
There you go.
Yeah, I consider myself a realist. I think a lot of times to my family, they would consider me a pessimist, but it's because the things that you see, and I have a different outlook on things from whether it's military or law enforcement or doing the private investigation, executive protection work. I always assume someone's an opponent until proven otherwise. So that's just kind of the mindset I have. I avoid large groups of people like it's the plague because of just past experiences. But this will be telling regardless of the outcome. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I think there's a lot of other problems that are tied in. Transparency in the government, promises that were made during the election that are clearly not being kept. Laws that are the laws for me, but not for thee. Just all the things that are going on. So the best way that I can put it and how I'm going to hang up this conversation and go back to, life in general is, love your family, get to know your neighbors. Don't become lazy in the political process. Doesn't mean you have to run for office, but writing letters or at least holding your representatives accountable. Train. Don't get lazy. Running sucks. Rucking sucks. Maintaining your equipment ain't the funnest thing in the world. Do it because you never know when you might need it. And I would rather have a fully functioning gear, whatever that gear might be, and die at a ripe old age, never having used it, than whether it's my body or my gear that's not ready and I need it. So, build your community, be a good person, keep your head on a swivel, be polite, don't be friendly, and pay attention to what's going on. I have a couple news sites every morning with breakfast. Pay attention to what's going on, local, state, and national, because the whole "don't go stupid places with stupid people and do stupid things." I believe it was John Farnham, classic quote. There's a lot of places that right now are far more powder keg than others. And if you walk into it, because you might be the most prepared person in the world, but if you weren't prepared for your environment, you might be all kitted up in the wrong way. So every day, enjoy it. I'm just dealing with a recent family emergency. One of my family members got really injured, and you find out really quick how things can go from bad or from good to bad. So enjoy every day the utmost of your ability, but do your homework and stay fit, stay frosty, keep thinking, be willing to be wrong and listen to other people's points of view and understand that you might get to a point where you just have to part ways. And that's the way you want to do it. You don't want to try to force somebody to drink your Kool-Aid because you wouldn't want them to force you to drink their Kool-Aid. So as always, it's always great to come on here and kind of stretch the cerebellum and, talk about things that are going on. I don't think there's black smoke on the horizon yet. I hope there isn't. And we can certainly talk about other things going on in the future.
Always great to have you on, Trek.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on again, guys.
It's always great to have Trek on. If for no other reason than the fact that, you're one of the few people that will happily call me on my BS when I start to indulge in the black pill a little bit too much.
We all need that sometimes.
I appreciate that. I am absolutely a pessimist, and sometimes I need to be reminded. I'm like, we're not quite at the black flag point yet, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks, Trek. Thanks for coming on, man. It's always a blast.
If you ever see me, if I'm ever wearing like a burlap sack, I got a tomahawk and a musket, and I come running out to you going, "You see any red coats?" Then you know it's time. Just kid up and follow me, and we'll go do it.
We'll try to keep up.
All right. Matter of fact, it's going to go out the door. Hug your wives, hug your kids, hug your spouses, hug your pets. Well, maybe not the cats because they don't like hugging most of the time. But take care of each other, guys. There's been a brilliant bright light was extinguished in the universe recently. And if you don't agree with a thing the man said or a thing the man stood for, you have to at least agree that the fact that he was willing to stand up in front of people who did not agree with a thing he had to say and calmly defend his points of view was a brilliant, beautiful thing to watch. And it's really unfortunate and saddening to me that someone, rather than stand in front of him and debate him, thought that the end of a muzzle was the best way to make him be quiet.
Just proved he was right.
What's the old saying about tear a man's tongue out? It doesn't prove him a liar.
Oh,
it's a quote from Game of Thrones. Give it to me for a second.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact quote.
When you tear out a man's tongue, it does not prove him a liar, only that you feared what he may say. Let that stew for a bit. Matter of fact, it's going out the door. Good night, everybody. Take care. Talk to you all another week. We have another guest next week. Normal time, normal place. Bye.
Night.